The young and the restless spoilers shocked the uncertain fate of Victor Newman. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the quiet corridors of Genoa City Memorial Hospital. Outside room 407, the Newman family gathered in tense silence, each one haunted by the possibility that their patriarch, Victor Newman, might not live to see another day. Just hours before, Victor had been rushed into emergency surgery after suffering a gunshot wound to his abdomen, a bullet fired by the cunning Ian Ward. Doctors raced against the clock to control the internal bleeding, but the grim reality loomed heavily on everyone's mind. The damage to Victor's internal organs might be too severe for him to overcome, especially given his advanced age and weakened state. Nikki Newman stood rigidly by the wall, her normally poised demeanor shattered by anguish. Her arms tightened protectively around her daughter Victoria, whose tears stained her mother's blouse. Victoria's sobs were audible even in the hushed hallway, echoing the heartbreak both mother and daughter felt. Nearby, Nick Newman sat hunched in a chair, staring blankly at the cold tiles. He clenched his fists, wishing he could somehow undo the night's horrific events. In contrast, Adam Newman was pacing restlessly, his agitation evident in the way he raked his fingers through his hair. Despite all the conflicts and complicated family history, the Newmans were united in a single, terrifying thought: Victor might not make it. Just a few hours earlier, Victor had confronted Ian Ward in a dangerous standoff. Their rivalry spanned years, filled with betrayals, machinations, and countless threats. Yet this encounter proved to be the most perilous of all. Ian, as sly as ever, seized a moment of vulnerability and shot Victor in the abdomen. The bullet tore through vital tissue before lodging in a place that no surgeon could quickly or easily repair. In the immediate aftermath, Victor collapsed, clutching his stomach as crimson stained his immaculate shirt. All attempts at keeping him conscious failed, he drifted into a state of shock, fighting for breath. By the time the paramedics loaded him into the ambulance, he was unconscious and unresponsive. Inside the hospital, the atmosphere was electric with both urgency and dread. Doctors and nurses rushed in and out of the operating room, doing everything in their power to save the Newman patriarch. Intravenous lines, blood transfusions, and emergency surgery were all in motion. Monitors beeped frantically, reflecting the precarious state of Victor's life. Everyone hoped for a miracle, but medical specialists knew that abdominal injuries, especially those that damage internal organs, are notoriously difficult to treat, no matter how skilled the surgical team might be. Hours slipped by, and as the Newman family waited, their anxiety twisted tighter, like a vice around their hearts. The tension brought out different emotions in each family member. Victoria, emotionally transparent, wept openly. She was inconsolable, tormented by memories of her father's unwavering support throughout her life. No matter what differences they might have had, Victor was still her rock, someone who always believed in her abilities to lead Newman Enterprises or to stand on her own 2 feet. Meanwhile, Nikki found herself torn between maintaining a facade of calm for her children and surrendering to her own panic. Her hands trembled when she tried to comfort Victoria, revealing the depth of her distress. They both knew that losing Victor would leave a void impossible to fill. Nick, usually the steady son who held firm to a moral compass slightly different from his father's, was at a loss for words. Despite the friction between them over business ethics, Nick respected Victor's determination and fierce loyalty to his family. Now, seeing his father on the brink of death forced Nick to reassess their strained relationship. 1,000 regrets flashed through his mind, the times he had stormed out of Victor's office in anger, the arguments that ended with doors slamming, and the countless words left unsaid. Nothing could change the past, but now he longed for one more conversation, one more chance to mend fences. Adam, on the other hand, had a more complicated history with Victor. Their relationship was shaped by secrets, betrayals, and the constant question of paternal acceptance. Yet, Adam's restlessness in the hospital corridor showed that fear and love can coexist. He couldn't shake the anger he felt toward Ian Ward for causing such heartbreak. Adam's heart constricted each time he remembered a rare moment when his father had praised him. Over the years, he had fought tirelessly for Victor's acknowledgement, and now he stood to lose him before they could truly repair the wounds of the past. If Victor died, Adam would be left grappling with a sea of unresolved emotions. As the night wore on, distant thunder rumbled, mirroring the foreboding atmosphere within the hospital. The media caught wind of the shooting, so a swarm of reporters gathered outside, eager for updates on Genoa City's most influential citizen. Their flashing cameras and insistent voices intruded upon the family's grief, forcing them to close ranks against the onslaught of publicity. Inside, the Newmans tried to maintain composure, but whispers of Victor's potential demise spread quickly, fueling speculation. Even hospital staff who were longtime residents of Genoa City exchanged sorrowful glances, aware of Victor's significance in the community. He was more than a businessman, he was a force of nature. Perhaps the darkest moment came when a surgeon cautiously approached the waiting family. His expression was grave, and the lines etched into his face revealed the toll the procedure had taken on him. He explained that while they had managed to stabilize Victor for the moment, the damage to his organs was extensive. Post-operative complications were likely, and the next 24 hours would be critical. The relief the family felt was fleeting, overshadowed by the surgeon's warning that multiple surgeries might be needed and that Victor's weakened condition, due to both his age and the shock of the injury, would challenge even the best medical interventions. In the days that followed, the Newman family began silently bracing themselves for the worst. If Victor's condition deteriorated, the possibility of planning a funeral loomed on the horizon. Nikki couldn't speak the words out loud, but she started to go through old photographs, remembering happier times when Victor's eyes sparkled with vitality. Victoria and Nick discussed how to break the news to family friends if the worst happened, while Adam struggled with the question of how he would ever find closure if his father died before they reconciled. Though none of them said it outright, each Newman was steeling themselves for a goodbye they desperately hoped wouldn't come. Rumors also circulated through town that Ian Ward had escaped capture and might still be lurking in Genoa City. Fear mingled with sorrow, adding another layer of tension to an already impossible situation. Would Ian try to strike the Newman family again? Was his vendetta against Victor and the Newmans far from over? For now, those questions had to remain unanswered as each family member focused on Victor's recovery. Their collective prayer was simple: let him survive this night, let him open his eyes one more time, let him have a chance to say his final words, or perhaps to live well beyond them. In the quiet moments when the medical staff made their rounds, the family huddled in corners, speaking in hushed tones. Sometimes they talked about the small things. Victor's favorite meal, the horses he loved to keep at the ranch, or the music he enjoyed listening to when he was feeling reflective. Even Adam contributed the occasional anecdote that made Nikki smile through her tears. At other times, they discussed the future of Newman Enterprises, the multi-billion-dollar empire that Victor had built from the ground up. Without him at the helm, what direction would the company take, and who would assume leadership? The question hung in the air like a dark omen, but it was overshadowed by the more immediate concern: Victor's survival. Throughout these tense hours, Genoa City locals united in sympathy. Friends and rivals alike found themselves whispering the same question: will Victor Newman die? Despite the controversies he had courted over the years, Victor's larger-than-life persona made the possibility of his demise almost unthinkable. Just as the sun rises each day, many believed Victor would inevitably find his way back, forging new alliances, orchestrating brilliant schemes, and continuing the cycle of triumph and turmoil that had characterized his life. Yet the reality of his fragility bore down on everyone in that hospital corridor, reminding them that even icons aren't immune to mortality. Every so often, the Newmans would steal glances toward the hospital room where surgeons and nurses tended to Victor. Machines beeped in a steady rhythm, measuring his heart rate and vital signs. Time seemed suspended between hope and despair. Seconds melted into minutes, minutes into hours. Each shift change brought a new doctor, a new nurse, and the same guarded expression that conveyed a difficult truth: recovery was possible, but not guaranteed. The bullet had wreaked havoc inside Victor's body, and even if he pulled through, the road ahead promised to be arduous. At around 3 o'clock in the morning, the tension reached its apex. The doors to Victor's room swung open, and a doctor emerged, looking worn but slightly more optimistic than before. He delivered the latest update: Victor was still fighting. The internal bleeding had slowed, and there was a chance that with careful monitoring, further surgical intervention might not be immediately necessary. The glimmer of hope was enough to make Nikki weep with relief. Victoria collapsed into a chair, covering her face in trembling hands, while Nick exhaled a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. Adam merely nodded, eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. Yet, the looming question remained: will Victor truly survive? The doctors refused to make any guarantees. His advanced age, the severity of his injuries, and the immense stress on his body created a precarious balance that could tip at any moment. Even if he pulled through the immediate crisis, infections or complications could still arise. The possibility of a memorial service hovered in the background like a menacing specter. Unspoken but understood by all was the fact that funeral arrangements might need to be made at a moment's notice. In the midst of this uncertainty, one thing became crystal clear to each member of the Newman family: life was fleeting, and love, despite all the tangled web of betrayals, secrets, and conflicts, was the one force that could unite them. They hovered at the edges of Victor's bed, waiting for a moment when he might regain consciousness, hoping they could share their deepest truths before it was too late. For Victoria, that meant a chance to tell her father how much she admired his unwavering spirit. For Nick, it was an opportunity to voice his respect, despite their moral divergences. For Adam, the opportunity to close a painful chapter and open a new one. For Nikki, it was the desperate need to look into Victor's eyes and know she wasn't about to lose her soulmate. Now, as dawn approached, a delicate hint of morning light filtered through the curtained windows of the hospital. A gentle hush fell over the corridors, broken only by the distant whir of medical equipment and the hushed voices of staff on night duty. Outside, the reporters still waited, cameras at the ready, hoping to catch a statement from any member of the Newman family. But inside, everything had narrowed to a single room, a single man, and a single, vital question: would Victor Newman live or die? Where do you stand on that question? Do you believe Victor, the Titan of Genoa City, the unyielding patriarch of the Newman family, is about to draw his final breath? Or do you hold out hope that he will rally once again, defying the odds in a last-ditch battle for survival? For the Newman family, faith and fear clash in equal measure, creating an emotional maelstrom that no one could have foreseen. Whatever the outcome, one reality stands firm: Victor Newman has forever changed the lives of those around him, and Genoa City itself might never be the same if he is gone for good. A grand funeral for Victor Newman, or a final trick from Ian Ward? The grandest funeral Genoa City had ever seen was about to take place. The news of Victor Newman's passing spread like wildfire, shaking not just his family but the entire community. Love him or hate him, Victor had been a force of nature, powerful, unrelenting, and nearly invincible in the eyes of those who knew him. And now, he was gone. The Newman family had spared no expense in honoring their patriarch's legacy. The church was adorned with elegant black and gold decorations, representing both mourning and Victor's unyielding power. Hundreds of people arrived, from close friends to longtime business rivals, all gathered to pay their respects. The casket, a masterpiece of mahogany and gold trim, was placed at the center of the altar, with a massive portrait of Victor standing tall behind it. His eyes still holding that same intensity, even in death. Victoria, dressed in a long black gown, stood beside Nikki, clutching her mother's hand tightly. Her eyes were red from crying, her heart aching with every beat. Nikki, though trying to remain composed, couldn't hide the sorrow etched onto her face. Nick and Adam stood near the front as well, silent but visibly affected. Despite all the conflicts, all the betrayals, and all the mistakes, this was still their father. They had lost the man who had shaped their lives, whether through love, fear, or ambition. People whispered throughout the hall. Victor Newman is really gone? I never thought anything could take him down. Genoa City won't be the same without him. The weight of grief settled over the room, but for some, there was also fear. Because while Victor's body lay in the casket, there was still one unresolved question lurking in the back of everyone's mind. What about Ian Ward? Ian Ward, dead or just another trick? Authorities had confirmed Ian Ward's death. After his final confrontation with Victor, he had been shot, and his lifeless body was taken to the morgue, placed right beside Jordan, another dangerous enemy of the Newmans. But something felt wrong. Ian Ward had always been a master manipulator, a man who could twist reality itself in his favor. He was meticulous, always planning several steps ahead. Could a man like him really meet his end so suddenly? Some believed Ian had anticipated this outcome. What if the gunshot had merely struck a hidden bulletproof vest beneath his clothes? What if the blood that had poured from his wounds was fake, a staged illusion meant to deceive his enemies? The morgue staff had confirmed his lack of a pulse, his body cold to the touch. But there had been strange whispers among the workers. A few claimed that Ian's body vanished for a brief period, only to reappear under unusual circumstances. The official reports stated it was a simple misplacement of documents. But was it? A shadow looms over the funeral as the funeral proceeded. An eerie sense of unease settled over the Newman family. While everyone else was focused on Victor's farewell, Adam's instincts told him something was off. He whispered to Nick, "Have they confirmed Ian Ward is really dead?" Nick frowned. "What do you mean?" "They found his body." "That doesn't mean anything," Adam muttered. Victoria overheard their conversation and looked at them with concern. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Nick sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I don't want to believe it, but we all know Ian. He's always 5 steps ahead." A shiver ran down Victoria's spine. What if Ian Ward was still out there? What if he was watching them right now? A silent observer? Outside the grand church, a mysterious figure lurked in the distance. Dressed in a dark coat, he stood under the shade of an old oak tree, his face hidden beneath the brim of a wide hat. He watched as the Newman family mourned. He saw their tears, their grief, their relief that an era had ended, that the danger had passed. And then, ever so slightly, the corner of his mouth curled into a smirk. Without a sound, he turned and disappeared into the night. Was it Ian Ward? Or just another ghost from the past? One thing was certain, this was not over.